there is an objective truth in soccer that there's a best right answer. There's a best next action. And that really stuck with me. If I can recognize the details about my teammate, then I can make better choices. My soccer IQ will go up.
Welcome to the How Soccer Explains Leadership podcast, where we explore leadership principles through the lens of the beautiful game.
Welcome back to How Soccer Explains Leadership. Thanks again for being a part of the conversation. I'm Phil Dark, your host, and with me is my brother, my co-host, Paul Jobson. Paul, how you doing, man?
Doing great, Phil. Just saying before we start recording, we pushed our Guatemala team off to Guatemala this morning. So we got a group of 26 headed down to the Antigua area today. They'll be down there for 7 days serving our community partners down there. FCA Guatemala, our partners on the ground. And then we have about 8 other partners within the different communities around Antigua that we serve when we go down there. And this is I believe it's year number 9. I think there's a skip year with that COVID thing we did back then. But outside, I think this is year number 9. So excited for them to get down there and start doing that and start getting some stories back here probably later tonight. So I'm excited there. And then survived Hurricane Beryl here in Waco, bypassed us, but definitely some friends of ours were hit down in Houston. Just got power back today. So it's just crazy. I'm not making light of the hurricane at all. We did get bypassed. It was, but we did have some friends that were and family out of power for a number of days, and definitely not a fun event. So, but we're all, other than that, it's now back to normal hot Waco temperatures here. That's our daily weather update, Phil.
Yes.
But,
well,
what's going on in the Dark household? What's going on in California? What's the latest with you, buddy?
Well, we got a wedding coming up. We've mentioned that. My oldest is getting married. And, with that, we're going to have our post-match show after this episode we're going to have today. Coming to you, we got Jessica Hain, and we're gonna be starting that interview here in a minute. But we're gonna have our post-match show, and then we're gonna take a couple episodes of just gonna do some recasts, things like that, and take a little break from our usual programming because my daughter's getting married, and I'm going to be focusing on that. And there's a lot of other really cool things. We're actually Providence World is the organization that I run. We don't talk about it too much on the show, but we're actually going to be kicking off some new ministry opportunities down in Honduras where we had a lot of work going on in the past, and now we're going to be doing a lot of sport ministry and different things down there. So stay tuned for that. So I'm very excited to be doing that and excited for your team. Can't believe it's 9 years. That's really cool. And you're also doing some stuff in Costa Rica with that as well. So a lot of Central America opportunities coming up, and excited about that, which, a little known fact, I shouldn't be little known, but I found it's little known in our world is Central America is actually part of North America, people. Because when I talk to most people, they say, oh yeah, you're going back to South America. And I'm like, well, no, we're going to Central America, which is actually part of North America. But anyway, on that note, just a little fun trivia. Do you know the 2 countries? Well, there's a couple, but the one in the Americas that is part of 2 continents.
Dun, dun, dun.
Little trivia question, folks.
Huh?
I'll give you a hint.
What is it?
U.S.
Panama?
lost to them. Panama. There we go. Our guest is coming in. Where's the trivia?
Ding, 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 ding.
Part of North America and South America. And with that, folks, we are going to kick off this interview with Jessica Hain. That was not even planned, folks. You can't plan these things. They just happen on this show. You never know what you're going to get. We got Jess Hain with us. Jess has an incredible background. She's coached at Liberty University. She played college soccer, all kinds of other stuff we're going to get in here in a minute. She is a mother and a wife, now doing some incredible things with North America's sport movement, the Fulcrum Center. We're going to get into all this stuff today. Jess, how you doing?
Well, I'm feeling pretty good because I'm really competitive, and I just won that game.
Yeah,
So
that was amazing.
feeling pretty good now.
I didn't even know you were going to come in. That was just a great little surprise. Paul was shocked. He was like, what just happened there? I just got beaten. I didn't even know I was competing. So Paul's a little bummed right now. I'm not going to lie.
Was that
set
question
up
for
some
Paul?
buzzers. We would have had buzzers. No, we
Yeah.
would have said who got in, but no, you won fair and square. You won fair and square.
Did you know it? Paul, did you know it?
No, I actually didn't know it at all. So
I was going to give a hint and say it's the team that beat the U.S. this year after a red card of a stupid red card punching in the back of a head, which nobody should ever do. And that may have given it away.
I would have known that at that point.
Yeah, you probably would have known that. Yeah, it would have been pretty easy. So, but Jess, one of the things we love to do with our guests, and I would like to get some more details, fill in the blanks on, usually with my bios, I go very vague, so you can fill in the blanks as you want. We love to just hear your story. A lot of people don't know you or your story, and so if you could just share that with our audience, just your story, how you became passionate about soccer, how you became passionate about leadership and coaching and all the things you're doing today.
Okay, I'll take a swing at that. My passion for soccer, I don't think I can explain other than it was in there from birth. As soon as I started playing, I was hooked. So I'd say on some level, I was born to play, born to love it and have a passion for it. And also, I think that the Lord gave me a pretty fun playground to play in that was safe enough and really kept me kind of on the straight and narrow for most of my young adult life. I grew up in North Carolina, High Point, Greensboro area of North Carolina, and soccer is a pretty big deal in North Carolina. But when I was little, it was still up and coming. Things were still emerging. So I played boys soccer for a long, long time. And when I first switched over to girls soccer, I almost quit because I got in a lot of trouble, a lot of fouls, and didn't know how to play with the girls because I always had to be so tough to play with the boys, I guess. So I almost quit, but I didn't. At club in high school, a lot of state championships. I think we won the first national championship ever in North Carolina, girls or boys, with my club team. And then played a little bit at Ohio State. Got a little homesick for the ACC in North Carolina and finished my career out at NC State. And then started coaching right away, really to just hide out. The professional leagues were about to start. So I was coaching to hide out, keep training with some of the best players in that country, stay fit, keep training, hope for a spot when the pro leagues began. And was disappointed at that point. Tried out for a few teams and didn't make it. So kind of stayed in college coaching, wondering what my path was going to be. If I was going to stick in soccer, then I would decide to stay the college coaching path. And so I served at a bunch of different colleges. Liberty was my last stop so far. I started at the University of Delaware. It was a really cool opportunity. I coached a little bit at Creighton University, coached at Clemson University, and then got to coach in Brazil for a little bit. I got to play in Brazil. Both really awesome opportunities that I would never have imagined. And then from there, had the pleasure of serving at Liberty for about, I think 9 seasons. So that's a little.
Yeah, and then since then, since Liberty, you've been getting involved with some sports ministry as well. And so, can you just talk a little bit about that and how you got connected with the sport movement? And you're also working with Fulcrum Center. We'll get into the details of all that in a little bit. But how did you get connected with all that? What did that? Was that something you were doing during the coaching, or did it just did you start doing it after?
So most of my soccer life was before meeting the Lord. And when God radically got a hold of my life when I was coaching at Clemson. So it wasn't as a player. I was just playing soccer for myself and for what I could achieve and coaching almost in the same way until I was about 29 years old and the Lord got a hold of my life. And so I would say that my life was radically changed when I was coaching. And then God graciously removed me from stateside coaching and put me in the international stage, I think really to protect me and to have me all to himself. There are a lot of things in my life he needed to rewrite and a lot of things that I needed to learn. So I spent 2 years down in Brazil as he was basically rewriting and rescripting for me what my life looked like in Christ, and then catapulted me back into the coaching scene at Liberty. So I connected with the sports movement while I was in Brazil. I was very young in my faith, although I was 29, 30, and 29 and 30 while I was down there. So connected to the movement and kind of within the international scene, I was just blown away. People that discipled me are still very active in the sports movement down in Brazil. To this day, they are my family. So sports ministry started as the Lord was saving me in Brazil, or as the Lord was saving me at Clemson. I ended up connecting to the Charlotte Eagles and Missionary Athletes International through some connections. I had played with players that were still playing there. I had also worked with the general manager as he was recruiting my Clemson players to be there, and I ended up there. And so through MAI and the Charlotte Eagles, I received discipleship, learned a lot about discipleship, and then it was kind of sent from them into my time in Brazil. So that's how I connected to sports industry and to the movement.
Yeah, that's I appreciate you sharing that. You know, as all of us have our kind of those defining moments or whatever people want to call them throughout our careers, and they define us to make us kind of who we are, how we see things, what lens through which we look. I mean, with those things that, that have kind of happened throughout your life, and now as you are doing the things that you are doing, I mean, what would you consider to be your why? What is your life's purpose? Why do you do what you do?
Yeah, thanks, Paul. What I say now is that I help people be and do what God is calling them to be and do. So that is a fast way of saying I'm passionate about making disciple makers, helping coaches specifically, and then even more specifically, probably women in that space, because in the collegiate or even in the professional world of coaching, there's not, it's just to find someone that's willing to walk with you and disciple you is tricky and priceless, super valuable.
And I don't want to speak for you, but also just the female athlete in general, right? I mean, I would say that's probably, you didn't say female athlete, but I want to put that in there because having coached females as a guy for so long, it was always important that we had someone like yourself around our ladies. To maybe speak a little bit to the importance of that and how you've seen that be important through your career.
So women within team situations, that's always a perfect recipe for gossip and among other things. But there's also a bond and a camaraderie that happens with teams, women and men. But some of those social ties can have positive or negative influences. So biblically, there's a lot of forces pushing and pulling on you as an athlete that would certainly be outside of God's passion for what he would really want your life to be like. And a lot of that has to do with purity and sexual immorality within sports. That's a huge, prevalent area and a wrestle and a temptation. So, that's no different for women in sports, but it also, especially internationally, there is a lot of lack of understanding or care or composure when it comes to helping people in spaces of immorality.
These are some big issues. We talked a lot about just that issue of just the need for more women coaches in the women's game in particular, for those reasons like you're talking about. And we also talked, it was interesting though, I remember we were talking, I think it was Amanda Vandervoort when we were talking with Amanda, and she was talking a lot about a lot of the issues that females deal with that men just don't, and whether it's menstruation, whether it's some other issues in, that, and how that relates to injuries, things like that, that she was like, it's really important for the men to understand that as well, right? It's not just a thing that you just bring in the women to do that, because she's like, some women really are uncomfortable talking about those things as well. I have 3 daughters. I'm not uncomfortable talking about it, but it's weird for me to talk about it with the girls, right? Like, it's not right. If it's my daughter, it's one thing. If it's, and they're even weird about it, right? But to go into in a coaching situation, you're just not going to do that. It's just, especially in today's day and age, you start talking about stuff like that, people can get really weirded out for good reasons, right? So I don't know. What are your thoughts on that, and what does that look like? I mean, how important is it to make sure we're addressing those conversations, and then how do you think we best do that, given the fact that a lot of people are uncomfortable doing it? How do we? I mean, I don't want to say normalize it, but I guess it's not. How do we normalize it? Because these are real issues that come up, and it's particularly when you're talking about injuries and other things like that.
Yeah. So, Phil, I would say that transparency, trust, having a real relationship with these women that are in front of you is kind of a holistic look at your athletes is the way. I think that men and women can do it. It's certainly going to be weird or awkward. I don't know that if I were a man or even a woman, I don't know that I would go alone into that conversation. There's lots of reason in these days to be very shrewd, be innocent and shrewd in stepping into topics and situations that could have an impact on your longevity in your position. So it's sticky area, but the truth is the truth. And I had an AD one time. One of the best little clips I ever got from one of my ADs was make the right choice, leave the rest to God. Make the right decision, make the right choice, leave the consequences to God is actually what he said. So and I have thought about that a lot. Like that quote comes up a lot when, for the most part, the right choice to make. So step into it, be brave, be bold, be shrewd. Leave the consequences to God. So that would be my approach.
Yeah, no, that's really good. And, it's something I was reading a book, or I'm reading a book right now. It's called The Talent Code by Daniel Coyle. And The Culture Code by Daniel Coyle. He also wrote The Talent Code as well. But The Culture Code, and it talks about Greg Popovich, who has like way more wins than they would have expected him to win. However, they do that analysis with the Spurs. And one of the things they talked about was exactly what you just talked about. The reason he's so successful is because he builds that trust with his players. They say he's super hard. If you watch a practice, he's super hard on the players, but he's able to do that because he's built that trust with the players. And so I think, like you're talking about, is to speak that truth. You got to earn that conversation by building that trust, which doesn't just happen overnight. And so you can't just come in and start yelling at people.
Yeah.
You can't just come in and have those conversations. You can have those conversations within a trust. A relationship of trust, right? The circle of trust, right? Is that from, was that Meet the Parents, right? Circle of trust.
Yeah.
So
are you in or are you out?
Something like that. So, all right. So now I just want to kind of, we mentioned earlier the Fulcrum Center. I just want to talk a little bit about what that is, how it relates to the work you're doing with the North American Sport Movement and your Ph.D. and just really that goes into your passion and your why that you just talked about, for coaching and training coaches to incorporate their faith into coaching and to make disciples.
So how do those three kind of go together? What's that?
Yeah,
fit?
just what does it look like? What is the Fulcrum Center, first of all? What are you doing there? And then how does it all fit together?
So the Fulcrum Center is something that my husband, myself, 2 other couples and 2 singles dreamt up. We one day in our house. So we were a small group at our church. Go rogue, turn nonprofit. That's how the Fulcrum Center started. I remember I was on the couch, kind of, when you're coaching and it was a hard day, everybody's against you. Everything was like, it's bad practice. Some players got some complaint. Then you got pressure from Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Pressure from the
Never.
80. You guys, you have too much here. You should be successful. Why aren't you winning out? It was one of those days. And I came home and I was, poor Frank is just like on the receiving end of this dump of my idealistic why, what it should be, what it could be in coaching and what it wasn't. And I basically said something like it just can't soccer be a fulcrum? Because a fulcrum is a triangle. In physics, it's a rate of change, but in normal everyday life, it's point of a seesaw. So a seesaw has to sit on a fulcrum. So where soccer is this fulcrum upon which things can move, and ultimately Christ can be shared, and the Lord wins hearts. I mean, the fulcrum is the cross. So that's how the Fulcrum Center happened one day. But it wasn't just sport. Like, that's actually how the name came about. I'm the only person in the Fulcrum Center of these couple families, couple singles that are in sport. A couple of our board members are in sport. So what I was thinking or dreaming was kind of the sports arm. I've connected to the movement and then just tried to drag the rest of my team, like kicking and screaming. They're like, I'm not a sports person. But ultimately, we became this nonprofit because at that time, when we were dreaming up how to serve, like I'm coaching, but how do I serve? And Paul, I don't know if you'd resonate with this or not, but you to join Athletes in Action at that time or to join FCA, husband and wife both had to be in together. Both had to raise support. So I wouldn't be able to coach and join AIA full time and join it. So all I could do with those organizations was serve if asked or like try to help a partner, but I'm full time coaching. So that's kind of how our nonprofit started, because we wanted to help people be and do what God's calling them to be and do. How do we do that? And still get to coach and not have to leave to join a different organization. So it started at that time when I was coaching at Liberty and us looking to serve and realizing that we would have to create our own nonprofit in order to like raise support for that. And then my Ph.D., it's the Lord put on my heart to write during COVID. And I wasn't quite sure what that meant or where that was going to lead. Spent until about 2021 praying about that. And as I prayed about that and talked to, I prayed and talked, reached out to a couple professors that we knew, a dean here, people that were in academia. And what emerged was my passion for coaches and discipleship. So that prompting to write by the Lord, plus the space of COVID, plus the season that we were in as a family, which is we had parents that were sick, some parents that passed away, and we were looking to be caregivers for parents and children at the same time, and knowing that me asking the Lord, how am I going to serve in this sports space right now? So the PhD is about coaches and their passion and or awareness towards faith integration. So coaching and vocationally bringing my faith into what I'm doing, even all the way into the X's and O's, and making that little deposit into academia, because the coach's voice isn't really there in kind of competitive elite sports space. The coach's voice really isn't in academia yet. So we'll start to put it there.
Yeah. So with that, we have a lot of coaches, a lot of people that are doing some sports ministry, things like that. And I know a lot of coaches are struggling to say, hey, how can I integrate my faith into my coaching and really other areas of life? But really specifically, what does it look like? And what are some practical ways that coaches can integrate their faith into their coaching? And that people are doing it as you're learning in your interviews with these people.
So historically and typically, we can see coaches willing to share the gospel before a game or leave space for devotionals or encouragement time, pregame types of things, retreats during preseason, themes, creating culture, maybe using verses or even willingness to pray or share the gospel after a game. So there's a lot of these kind of dress ups, things that we've been doing around the game and using the game. And I haven't seen much threaded into the game, or even an understanding of how, although I have seen a little bit. So coaches that'll talk about praying, or prayer walking, around spaces, or even, praying themselves in different situations, or praying with, players. I've heard some of that. And then of course there's coaches who are really wanting to integrate their faith, have certain characteristics that just look biblical. So you can see the fruit of the Spirit is evident in the way that they speak, and the coaching points they make, and how they manage their anger and things like that. And yet, I still think there can be a lot more that we can. I think we can plumb that line deeper.
And what are you hoping will, like, I know you and I have talked about it. We even, have talked about it. We've gone to some of these, the Coaches on Mission gathering, some other different things. And you have some ideas and thoughts on how to actually, like, what does it look like on the field? And how can we incorporate, what have you done? But also, what are you hoping we can start seeing coaches being able to do to actually start making, doing disciple making on the field in the context of coaching the game?
I can only speak from some of my experience first, and not really speak for anybody else. But we have to ask, like, if the Word of God is useful for everything, is it useful for me as a coach? I think that's a fair question. I also think that it's a fair question to say, if God's 2 greatest commandments are truly the greatest, then that should be the greatest way that I coach. If they are the greatest across the board, it should be the greatest way that I could possibly coach. So I start asking God about that. And then I'm willing to listen to maybe what he has to say, and be open to trying something that might be outside of my comfort zone. Like, what if the Lord challenges me with the scripture, pray continuously? Have I ever tried? Have I ever tried to pray continuously through one practice, through one halftime, through I don't know. But if I keep my posture curious towards the Bible, and asking God, and curious towards what he could teach me, I see a better coach or a better teacher out there that could teach me how to coach.
Right. And then there is a quote, I don't know, it might be somebody else's, but you said this to me at some point. To get in the locker room, you have to have the coffee shop conversations first. If you get in the locker room and you've also been to the library, then you have credibility and teeth. The library hasn't happened yet with research. What does that even mean?
I can't take credit for that quote. That's
okay. Somebody said that
cool quote. Yeah, somebody said that, and
you shared that with me at one point somewhere.
Yeah, no, that is I feel like that's a quote from our friend Dan Williams, but he might have gotten that from somewhere. He might have picked that up, so he might have said that to me. What that means is the coffee shop is relationship. Only certain people are allowed into a locker room. So if you go into a locker room and you have good relationships, then things can happen. There's opportunity there for discipleship, or even for conversation. But the library is the research. And without that research base, that space of the coach's voice being actually thoroughly explained or deposited into academia, you only have anecdotal, maybe even subjective argument. But research allows for some hopefully objective arguments. So now you've got both, and now into the locker room, you have teeth.
Yeah, and I think we talked about that with Graham Daniels when we had that interview with Graham, Paul, if you remember that, when we were talking about, he said, his experience as a director of a football club gets him into some rooms. His Ph.D. gets him into other rooms, right? So you have that both and I think it's a different both and here, but you have that relationship plus, that research to be able to say, we got that trust that we talked about with even earlier we were talking about Popovich. You got that trust that's built, and hey, this isn't just stuff I'm making up. This isn't just stuff that doesn't have a basis, doesn't have something that it's coming from somewhere, right? So that's I really like that.
Well, and if
Paul,
you
what do you
think
think?
about it
Go ahead.
from the coach standpoint, it's like it's important from coach to athlete, but as we try to disciple and walk alongside of coaches, I think it's equally relevant and important.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I guess because I was in the game and coach and even coaching at a Christian university where there's so many opportunities for people who want to kind of come alongside your team and have an opportunity to serve. And as a coach, you're wary of those people, being honest, because as a coach, you are cautious the people who can quote unquote touch your players. What influence do they have on them? While every intent being a strong, Christian influence, if they've not done some kind of research about, the sport or your team or your players. I mean, that research could be just about anything, I guess, but there has to be more than just, hey, I know the word of God and I want to come talk to your team, So I think some of that's very important because I think your point and what you're trying to, what you are doing is that there's not a lot of research based on sport specific things. There's discipleship all over the world in a lot of different avenues, but what are we doing strictly for sport in these certain avenues? And I think it's a well needed thing, and it's quite a mountain to climb, I'm sure.
I'm just obeying and making one deposit. So I'll do what I believe God has asked me to do and leave all the consequences to Him. But
there you go. I could see a title for this episode already, Phil, coming through here. We're gonna hit another quote. Let's see if you actually said this one or not. Okay. If I can get a player to think about the other players empathetically, their soccer IQ will go through the roof. Talk about that a little bit. I'm assuming you actually did say that quote. It's a great quote, by the way. But take us through that. What is that? Dive into that a little bit to it for us. Phil.
By the way, I have no idea who said any of these quotes. They're just they're there. I'm giving them all credit to Jess. So whether they're hers or not, they're just saying quotes. If you
where'd
ever
they come
said
from?
I thought they were all from you. I'm just blown away by them. And so anyway,
Sometimes I get on a soapbox. Phil's heard a few of this. So most of the things I remember in my head come from something that I read or listened to, and it blew me away, and then it just gets stuck in there. So there's a coach and a thinker named Raymond Verhegen. He's Dutch, and he did some research, Ph.D. research of his own in periodization. So he might be known for periodization, but he started something called the World Football Academy, I think after his time with the Dutch men's national team, and he's been at some NSCAA or when it was the NSCAA, he did some stuff there. He was at UNC, I think, partnering with Anson for a little bit, like running some of his conferences. And he basically claimed that there is an objective truth in soccer, that there's a best right answer. There's a best next action. And that really stuck with me. If I can recognize the details about my teammate, then I can make better choices. My soccer IQ will go up. If I know the time in the game, the score, the third of the field that I'm on, whether my teammate is left-footed or right-footed, whether my teammate is fast or slow, what is best for them, where's the defender, based on all these million things, if I can assess that really quickly, there's most likely a best choice for what my next movement would be or what my next decision will be. And that was kind of one of Raymond Verhegen's claims. And it just, I was right there. He was like, we get stuck in this flavor of the month coaching where coaches do what we learned or how we were taught or what we feel, and maybe missing the point that there could be a best way to make a decision or even to coach. So me thinking about all those details, making me really think about my teammate more than myself or the situation around my teammate instead of myself, made me realize that there is a connection between relationship IQ and soccer IQ or skills IQ. There's a relationship. The more I know about my teammate, number one, the better I can love them. God's second greatest commandment. And then also I will know how best to serve them. My next best action to serve them on the field. And that's soccer IQ. So I hope that helps clear up the quote.
Yeah, totally. And I fully agree with that. I mean, I think that, we're going back to relationship again, right? And I think that, the teams that spend, it's kind of like sharpening the axe, I think part of sharpening the axe within your team is building that community, not always just between the coach and the players, but players to players, and getting to know each other, their tendencies. And I personally think you're saying this too, is it's not just about what are their soccer tendencies, but what is their personality? Even within conversation on the field, what is something that I can say that I know is going to shut them down? What is something I know for sure is going to motivate them? And sometimes players just fly by the seat of their pants, just say whatever they want to say. And they're like, why are you so upset? Why did you shut down? And it's, speaking that same language and getting to know each other, is very, very critical. So, I can agree with that.
Exactly. So Paul, I could ask as a teammate, I could ask the question, what do I need or what am I good at? Which is maybe I'm a super fast forward and I want to make a brace. So I want someone to dump it over the top. But what they need is me to stop and check back to the ball. Maybe get closer to them because defenders are on their back, or maybe they can't hit that ball with their left foot that I'm hoping that. So I can think about me and what I need or them and what they need. And when I think about them first, my soccer IQ will go up.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the coaching piece of me would throw in there, and you're not talking coach speak, but my coach brain goes even further to go, and then being on the field together as much as possible, training those environments. Because what I don't want people to hear that aren't familiar with coaching is like, oh, well, they can just get to know each other, and then on the field they'll just figure it all out. No, you have to have the rep on the field too, right? I don't want to bypass that. What seems like a little nugget, but I think it's a huge nugget if people aren't tracking with that. Like train that environment as much as you can.
Well, and as a coach, Paul, I'm a teammate too. So what do my players need from me, and how can I serve them? As opposed to, I've really got to get this win. I don't know, my job security is like all the worries and pressures I may have that are separate. But what do they need from me and how can I serve them? I think as coaches, we find a lot of tension between what the players need and what's coming at me.
Yeah.
And there's probably,
I just want to add one thing real quick too, to that. When you are empathetic and you actually are learning and understanding the other players, the other positions, what they need, what they're doing, all that, you're also, increasing your ability to play all those other positions as well, right? So this is something I just had a conversation with a young player, and he was looking to go to college, and some of these schools are looking at him and they're like, oh, I'd love to see you at outside back. And they're a 6 or an 8. And they're like, oh, I've never played it. And I said, well, first of all, the answer to can you play that position? The answer is always yes. Don't ever say, well, I don't play that position. You can. But the thing is, when you're doing this and understanding the other players, you are able to play those. Your soccer IQ is at that level. And I've seen that with my son. He learned the game. He knows the game. He studied the game. So when a coach asks him to play a different position, he knows what they're doing because he studied that. And especially if you're a central midfielder, you absolutely need to know what everyone else is doing. But even as a striker, you need to know what the outside backs are doing. You need to know what the center backs are doing. You need to know what the keepers are doing and what they're thinking and how they're thinking about these different things. As a goalkeeper, for sure, you're leading from the back. But these are different things that, as a goalkeeper, that's what, as a 5'8" goalkeeper, that's what made me able to actually play the game as long as I did, because I was understanding what everyone else was doing and able to be a part of who they were. One of my biggest compliments I ever received was from a teammate of mine. And he said, when you're not back there because either the coach, had someone else play the second half or whatever, he goes, I feel like part of my brain is missing when I'm playing because I was directing and leading and helping, right? And as a teammate, if you're that teammate, man, you'll be so valuable, not just because you understand the others, but because you're going to be anticipating what they're going to be doing, and you'll be able to also play wherever you need to be playing on that field as well as a teammate. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there because I know that's what a lot of young players especially are like, well, I'm just a striker. That's all I need to know and study. No, it's not, because you're not going to be a complete player, nor will you be able to help your team as much as you could.
I was going to throw in there too. There's a longer episode podcast about that coaching, the coaching for self and coaching for others. And as the college game, as the game continues to change, and with all that, you can say whatever, you can say NIL, you can say whatever, players being able to leave at the drop of a hat, coaches leaving, whatever. Even more to say our coaches need more support, and through all of these things.
100%. 100%.
All right, let's transition here. And we're not transitioning into anything actually. Let's just move on to another topic. Let's talk more about you. Okay, tell us a little bit about a defining moment in your career as a player. Why was it impactful? Why do you refer back to it as an impactful time? What was that defining moment as a player you can think of?
Okay, so I'm sitting in the post-game locker room of the ACC tournament, and we just lost to Clemson. So I was playing NC State. We were playing Clemson. We lost. We're in the post-game locker room. And my coach at that time said to us, some of you shouldn't even be here. Now, there's a lot behind that, a lot in front of that, but that moment really defined my thinking, as it forced me to ask the question, what kind of coach do I want to be? Or even really, what kind of person do I want to be? Because at the time, I couldn't tell you that I was going to be coaching. All I wanted to do was play. But that comment in that moment is still, I remember where I was sitting. It was that kind of a comment that just time froze for just a split second. And I thought, wow.
Yeah, it's words can pierce like swords, right? I mean, that just comes true in those moments, and those passionate, I'll call it a passionate coach. You would hope it's coming from passion. I don't know, but I think also teaching our coaches, how are we speaking? But I can definitely say, and I think Marcy would absolutely say too, you learn a lot from all the coaches you ever had as you become a coach, and you take bits and pieces from each of them, the good or the bad, to help define what you want to be and what you want to be for others. It's not about coaching. You just said it. What kind of person do I want to be? So that's pretty impactful.
I might be one of the few players in the nation that had 4 coaches in 4 years. So I'll chalk that up to maybe a record. But I learned a lot because I had 4 college coaches in 4 years, and so that, of course, defined my playing career. But it also was pivotal, defining the coach that God was going to shape me into.
Yeah. Well, now with transfers being a lot easier, there are going to be some people competing with you with the number of coaches that they've had in their career.
That's true.
I might finally get surpassed.
That's right. That's right. I hope not.
Maybe they've had 5 and 5 years now with the COVID years and stuff. So
that's right.
Or 6.
That's another
Some
thesis.
people have 6. That's a whole different conversation. So that's a good segue into, who's the best coach? It could be a couple coaches if you can't pick one, but that you played for or coached with, and kind of what set him or her apart from the rest.
If I can make it through the comment, I'll tell you that could get tricky though. My best coach, hands down, was my stepdad. He was my first club coach. He started a boys club team here in the area called the Jamestown Jammers and picked us right out of the Little Rec League soccer. He was an amazing coach, and he didn't play soccer. It was still long enough ago that dads would coach teams and not be soccer people, but he literally taught me how to run. So back in the days or now we do it all the time in just our warm-ups and plyometric, like the different types of speed drills to make somebody fast. But he did that for me and taught me that one-on-one, and just took this extra time to get to know me. I was the only girl on his team. And then obviously eventually years down the road, he and my mom actually got married. And he passed away in December. So I did make it through the combat, which is great. So we just lost him, and he was still to this day, favorite soccer coach. But it was because of the time that he took and the investment that he made relationally and skill-wise. At the same time, it was this double this integration of relationship and coaching, which we know is biblical. Those are God's 2 greatest commandments.
Yeah, and it's coming together, right? That coffee shop, the relationship to be able to do that. And I think that's what it is missing so much in the professionalization of the game, is that kind of that incentive, that built-in incentive, invested interest to build those relationships and build the players as humans. And we talk a lot about that on this show. But it used to be that was a given because it was parents. Now we don't have the parents, so we, and they'll say, well, we have much better soccer training. And it's like, okay, I don't necessarily disagree with that at some level, but sometimes I would argue. But but beyond that, I think that we keep talking. Also, we've talked on the show about we train to the 1%, right? So most of the kids will never play this in college and professionally. So do we really? What do we really want to have moving forward? And I think we're going to see some changes over the next couple of decades in the youth soccer. But yeah, I think that's really interesting, because I look back and go, yeah, my dad was the best. He never played soccer, never understood it. He learned the game, but he cared. He cared about me, cared about my friends. He cared about the team, and to be able to do that. So I just love to hear that. There. I think the other thing that we didn't even talk about earlier, and I'd be curious to do another study, maybe this can be your next research project there, Jess, but to see how many of the World Cup players, the national team, the pro players, the college players in the late 80s, 90s actually played soccer with boys growing up. And I would say it's probably a large percentage of the best of the best actually played on the boys' teams growing up. Remember reading Michelle Akers talking about that, doing it. Mia Hamm talking about that's what she did as well. You look at the Brazilian, when they started have their rise, all of those players, because they didn't even have girls soccer, let alone there wasn't even an option. And so you saw that rise, and now you're starting to see the other countries now catching up and surpassing the U.S. game, because most of those girls played with the boys growing up as well. It's just an interesting conversation to be able to say, how can we, now you just see completely separate, and you see, I think, a lesser quality as far as, to be frank, with a lot of the speed of play, some other things going on. But anyway, it's just a side note. I don't know. Did Marcy, Paul?
Yeah, a bit.
I think she did.
And she continued to train with guys through her professional career. I mean, that was just, you go back to Chicago and train with every professional guy or girl would come back and all train together. It's just, what it is just finding, what environment can you put yourself in where you're not the best player? You know?
Exactly.
Right. That's exactly right. I mean, even, I don't know if the rules have changed, but we had practice players at Liberty that were guys who had a practice team of men in order to, test and stretch our limits. Bigger, faster, stronger is really, the male physique. So if we can do that, then we get edges. We get little inches and centimeters and seconds of edge.
Absolutely. All right. So as we start to wind down the conversation here, it's been awesome Jessica, appreciate your time and energy into our conversation. And there's a couple of questions we ask everybody as we kind of head towards the end of this, and I'll get to start us off because this is actually one of my favorite questions. What is a lesson you have learned directly from the game of soccer that you use in your marriage or your parenting?
It happened later in my soccer career as I was coaching, but what does my teammate need from me and how can I serve them? It has impacted and transcend. It's simple to see in the game. In life, it takes, some real concerted effort to have that thought.
Absolutely.
That's an important one. It's, I think, there's some people that are convicted right now as they're hearing you say that, right? I'm not gonna, name any names here, but, anyway, last question we always ask our guests is, what have you watched, read, or listened to that has most impacted your thinking on how soccer explains life and leadership?
So everything that I've read and experienced from Raymond Verhegen, whom I mentioned, and I might be butchering his name. Sorry, Raymond, if I'm butchering your name.
He's a full-time listener, so he'll.
Yeah, he of course listens.
So I figured. But searching the scriptures and really pressing into God, if I felt like it was not a faith crisis, but this catalytic moment where I'm saying, God, if these are your greatest commandments, that I have to see that should be the greatest in my coaching. And so the Bible then would be one of those spaces. But then as it converged, as I explored some of Raymond's philosophy about kind of the objective code, this objective truth. And I see that biblically. Truth is truth. Truth is a person. So I see that, and that really spoke to a place in my heart in the tension versus subjectivity, and that how I feel is right, or everybody's right is right for them. And so in that moment, so basically those two, or this one coach, Raymond, and then through the scriptures and through the Lord kind of bringing together this truth that this guy doesn't even realize how gospel centric the truth is that he's discovered, but it's sitting right in the scriptures. And so it felt to me like an answer to prayer. Here's what you were wrestling with. Let me show you how it begins to fit inside of my coaching. Because like Paul said, it'd be really easy to outsource. Or it's easy in the pros and you've got just so many people that can outsource specific things of your team, and suddenly you're left with just X and O, and you've kind of outsourced even your authority, your influence. You've outsourced discipleship. So to bring it back in and give this objective philosophy that that really, if you test the scriptures, it holds. That would be the thing that most impacted and influenced me even to now.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that about the outsourcing, right? That's something I talk to a lot of people about, because they're talking about whether it's, we're going to go and have FCA just come in and speak. And there's nothing wrong with that. But one of the things you can't transfer fully, you can piggyback on it, but you can't transfer it fully, is trust. Right? Like if I have a friend and I introduce him to somebody else, that somebody else, they'll trust him a little bit more than random stranger because I introduced them, but they're not going to trust him like my friend trusts me. Right? So as a coach, we try to say, hey, we're going to bring this person in and they're going to speak to the team, and they're going to have the same impact or more impact than I would because they're a better speaker. Fact is, this new person coming in, it's going to be most of it will go in one ear out the other, because there's no trust built. There's no relationship built. This person is just a person coming through, and what do they care? It might be inspirational. It might be motivational, but think of most talks that you've ever heard in your life. How many of them do you really remember stuff from? I'd say probably very few. And if you do, it's probably maybe a little quote.
Yeah.
right?
Well,
Maybe a
and
nugget.
you can't outsource faith either. So you can't outsource trust, and you can't outsource your faith. And if the great commandment is go and make disciples, and I say, oh, I'm going to outsource that to my team chaplain,
Right.
I've just torn the flesh off the bones in my own faith.
That's right. So yeah, as you're thinking about that, folks, think about what are those things that are non-transferable, right? And even talking about, the things that I know I can't transfer. Obviously I can't transfer my husband status to somebody else and be like, hey, you just take that for this week. No, it doesn't happen. Same thing with father, and with you, with mother, Jessica, and those are things that folks, like, they're non-transferable. As a coach, that role as coach is a sacred role, and it's not transferable in that instance for that team that you're a part of. If you do, it will have massive impact on that team. And you see that with, even as you talked about having 4 coaches in 4 years. I imagine the consistency, the culture of those teams were in flux the whole time. Right. And so that's something that, it is a very important role. It's why we take so much time. And it's not just coach of teams, leaders, same thing in organizations, families, different things. So, all right. Well, thank you, Jess. Appreciate you. I appreciate our friendship. I appreciate you taking the time to be a part of this. Finally being able to get you on. Finally made it work. I know, Paul, thank you. I even saw your little boy running around in the background a little bit. So I know we're all juggling things, and that's what we love about this, is that's part of it, right? That's why we do this show, is because we know we're all juggling things, and we want to help each other and encourage each other and be with each other. So thank you, Jess. Appreciate you.
Thanks. I was really humbled to be here. Paul, it's good to see you again.
You as
Feel
well.
like I
Thanks
just
for being
see you
on
all
with
the
us.
time.
All right, folks. Well, thank you for being a part of it. Thank you for taking the time to do this and to just really engage what we're talking about. We do hope that you engage, and we hope that you subscribe to the show. So all these episodes you'll get right away. You'll get them emailed to you every week. They'll just end up in your feed. Rate and review the show. That helps to get it out to other people, and share it. Most importantly, share it with others. If this helps you, I guarantee it'll help others as well in your lives. So, that's most of how we get it is out, is just word of mouth. So we'd really appreciate you sharing this if it's something that you have been able to engage in and it has helped you in your life. So with all that, check out Warrior Way, warriorwaysoccer.com. You can check out Coaching the Bigger Game. It's not too late. If you want to get involved with this pilot cohort we have, you can reach out to me. You'll have a little catch up to do, but we'd love to get you into that. And if you want to learn more about Providence World, you can do that at providenceworld.com. As always, folks, we hope that you're taking all that you're learning from this show and you're using it to be a better parent, a better spouse, a better player, better coach, better leader, better in everything you do. And continually remind yourself that soccer does explain life and leadership. Thanks a lot. Have a great couple weeks.